tonight on First Tuesday...
It's like living in a zoo. Everybody here is like animals.
A family at war in Beirut, survivors after 10 years of bloody conflict. And here in Britain, families at war against the gangs who terrorise them out of racial hatred.
I tried to get out of the game, they kicked me in the head, and then I just passed out.
Good evening. Tonight, First Tuesday is about families and survival in circumstances that most of us never have to face. We begin with a film made in a country which is now celebrating a pretty ghastly anniversary. It's 10 years since the start of the war in Lebanon, a tragedy which we've watched in gruesome detail month by month ever since. Those of us who've been there to cover it have found a conflict that's not only horrific and frightening, but also bewilderingly complex. The only thing that's simple is the killing. For this anniversary, therefore, we decided to find out what it's like to live through a decade of war. The making of Lebanon A Family at War was an unusually personal assignment for our reporter Martin Short. Just before the Civil War erupted, he married a Lebanese bride, and it's her family, his in-laws, who are the survivors, the subject of this film.
Beirut, Lebanon. For 10 years, people have had to go on living here, while gunmen, bombers, and a host of armies have reduced this once prosperous city to rubble. A generation has grown up through endless wars fought in the name of race, religion, and nationality, while the ruins of Beirut cling about them like a shroud. The fighters carry on, but so do the Lebanese. In the midst of all the slaughter, how have they survived? Friday lunchtime in Beirut. Every week on the Muslim Sabbath, the Saidi family give thanks for survival by sharing in one huge and often noisy meal. The hostess is Mrs. Aliyah Saidi, a widow who is the matriarch of the family, known to all her guests as Hani. In 1974, I married Hani's youngest daughter. We set up home in Britain. My in-laws have held on in Beirut ever since. Hani's brother, Sadallah, a surgeon. Her sons, Shawi, an engineer, and Ramzi, a businessman. Her daughter, Amal, and more than a dozen grandchildren who have grown up through the war. This week, there's news that a young friend of the family has been killed by accident, caught in the crossfire on the streets.
It happened when two cars were following each other and shooting at each other, and it happened that he was stuck between the cars, and he just had... Yeah, he's 26 years.
On any journey across Beirut, anyone may get killed. So how does the Saidi family face up to the pressure of simply getting through each day?
We hang on. Nobody gives up. The house is hit today, tomorrow it's repaired, you know? I know people that repaired their houses and their glass windows maybe 5, 6, 7 times already. You see a shop blown up, the next morning it's being cleaned up, it's being rebuilt. This is the Lebanese resilience. They will never give up. And this is why Lebanon has survived so far, you know?
We had no idea it was going to be like this. No idea. It was a matter of a few days and that's over and to go. And then it went on and on and on.
What's it like bringing up children here? How can you risk the lives of your children by staying here?
We sit up all night and all day waiting for them to come back unharmed.
Whenever there is an open school.
It's a chance we have to take.
It's their life also, their country also, and if we want to maintain a country, everybody has to stick. Everybody, including children.
Many people have paid with their lives, and we should be prepared to pay the price if it has to happen. And we are prepared.
That price may be paid any day. To limit the risk, the Saidi family listen for news of any fighting car bombs or kidnappings before choosing which road to take home. The Lebanese have been living with war ever since 1975, when fighting started between militias of Lebanese Christians, the Maronites, and the Palestinians they saw as enemies. It turned into a civil war as groups of Lebanese Muslims fought alongside Palestinians against the Maronites. The Syrian army joined the conflict in 1976, while Israel frequently intervened against the Palestinians. When the Israelis invaded again in 1982, they killed not just Palestinian fighters, but thousands of Lebanese civilians. In 10 years, Lebanon has suffered more than 100,000 dead and 500,000 wounded. 1 million people have lost their homes. Today, Lebanon is a broken and divided country. Half its land is still occupied. What remains of Beirut is split into two, a largely Christian eastern sector and a largely Muslim west. Does the Saidi family feel the country can ever be put back together again?
It's really very sad. But if I want to say what I feel about it, I feel very sad. I really cried every day. I don't think there is a good future for anybody, really, in Lebanon. I don't know, maybe things will change, and how, I cannot say. But at the moment, this is my opinion. There is no future in Lebanon.
But Umhani's son, Shawi, is sure there is a future in a reunited Lebanon. That's why, even though he's a Muslim, he often crosses the green line into Christian East Beirut, calculating the risk every time.
I like to defy the green line. Usually when there are kidnappings, it's publicized. If there was kidnappings the day before, also I take precaution. I do not come. I make a phone call, find out how the situation is, and then I just drive through. Identification card is something every Lebanese carries. It has your name, your father's name, mother's name, the district you were born in, your religion. Religion has always been in history used as a tool for political means. And it's been used here very, very cleverly. To me, religion is secondary. The important thing is my nation, my nationality. I would be willing to change my religion if it's going to solve the problem.
Shawi still does a lot of business on the Christian side of the line. Today, he's visiting a truck assembly depot where, even at the height of the war, he employed workers of all religions.
Every single sect in Lebanon, including Palestinians, were working in this place here. And this man here was in charge. He's a Maronite. Unfortunately, during the last outbreak of firing, since the army moved over to this area, they were directing some shells probably to them, and naturally we had a few shells inside here, as you can see. A very strong Grad rocket right there. All the glass, of course, broken. The building is shaken. It's quite extensive. I have suffered, I think I have paid my share. The actual loss could be in the region of, speaking sterling, about $1 million. Loss of business is not possible to assess because it would have been, I don't know, 5, 10 million.
To prop up the family fortunes, Shawi and his brother Ramzi have built a flourishing transport and translation business in Saudi Arabia. The translating is done in Beirut under the supervision of their sister Amal. But their success contrasts with Beirut's collapse as the business capital of the Arab world, which Ramzi Saidi has watched in despair.
The main business center, is destroyed and still destroyed. But what has happened is that many satellite business centers have been created either in West or East Beirut to take the place. And many people have been able to continue. But I would say that maybe 95% of foreign businesses that were situated in Beirut have had to move out because of the physical impossibility of continuing. But the main problem, of course, is one of security. And we have had this office, for instance, partly destroyed during the Israeli invasion. We're still preparing it, and we had to redo it completely. And from time to time we get a bullet on one of the windows, and you have to change the glass. And of course, the girls are not happy sitting near any windows when things get a bit hot. Well, basically, we don't want to leave our country. We do not want to go and live abroad. We want the children to know their roots, and also because we are involved. We are involved. There are so many people that are related to us, that are our people, that are involved in trying to make this country come back on its feet, and of course rid it of all foreign invasions and occupations, especially the Israelis in the south. We are indirectly helping the resistance in the south, and we can't just tell them, okay, now it's over, we want to go somewhere else.
The Saidis have kept on living in Beirut, unlike many well-off Lebanese who have chosen to leave the country. Millions of poor Lebanese don't have that choice. The misery of Lebanon's poor stares Ramzi in the face every time he looks out from his home. The building next to his house used to be the palace of a Kuwaiti sheikh. Today it's filled with 76 refugee families hit from all sides in the past 10 years. Like the Saidi family, these are all Shia Muslims from the south of Lebanon, land now occupied by Israel. Ramzi hears the story of one typically unfortunate inhabitant from their spokesman, Abu Nasim.
He had a cart on which he was selling vegetables near the sea, and Israeli gunboats were shelling, and a shell came nearby and hit his leg. The bone is completely out in this area, he thinks, and for almost 2 years he hasn't healed, and in hospital they are doubtful whether his leg will ever heal. And they have 7 or 8 children, some of them are here, and they have no source of income.
يعني مثل فضلك فضل غيرك أمن مكين هذا ضيع خضرة بجيب لنا الولد شوية خضرة فعبت البكين تعطيني ربطة خبز.
The people around here help her. Either they give her money, or the other people who make bread and sell it here in this palace, they give them some bread, and sometimes they give them a few pounds, you know, depending on what they can get for them.
على طول بضلني بقول في الله إذا خليت بليت.
She always has hope because there is a God. Allah is there. She hopes that when her husband gets better, she will be able to go out and get some work. She can't leave him. She has to move him and take care of him, and also she has to take care of the young one who's still suckling.
What do you think of war?
It's terrible.
Aliyah is Ramzi Saidi's daughter. She's 15.
We know all about it, but I think that if we stopped fighting, we could, and talked about things, we could have a much better world, really. We have a civil war going on, and people are fighting, each other. Probably people who knew each other before are fighting each other now for no reason at all. But people are getting used to using their bombs and their weapons to get what they want.
School children in Lebanon play much the same games as children anywhere else, but the war has left generations of Beirut youngsters psychologically scarred. When the fighting started, Aliyah was 5. Her brother Brahim was a baby. The war constantly invades the classroom.
Well, the school's been bombed several times during all the breakouts of fighting here. And it's been bombed and repaired many, many times. So it has almost no facilities. We just come here to study. We do nothing else. No art, no recreation, no nothing.
The most damage was in the Israeli invasion before they started in a few days when the planes hit. We were sitting in class. We were just packing our books, getting ready to go. It was 10 minutes more. And then we hear a plane noise. We think it's an ordinary plane because planes always come over here. Yeah, then it gets stronger and stronger, then it screams, and then we hear a big boom. And I'm sitting on the window here, near the window in my class. So when we hear the boom, all of us run. Yes, and the minute I got out of my chair, the glass fell onto my chair. And I was holding my suitcase, and the books were flying out. And then one of the teachers knew the sound of the plane when it comes, when it wants to hit. So he heard the sound and he said, "Everybody duck."
Of course, I'd want all these parties to get together and make peace with each other and live together happily ever after. But actually, I don't know if it's possible in this country anymore. Although everything's possible in Lebanon. We've seen so many things, everything is possible.
What do you think living in Beirut is like?
It's like living in a zoo. Everybody here is like animals. They kill, they do everything, and they don't care, as if there are no people, as if they're not human beings.
Are you ashamed of being Lebanese?
No, but if they go on for another 20 years, maybe, I will.
1 o'clock in the morning. An exchange of wounded across the Green Line. Working for the Lebanese Red Cross is another member of the family, Tima, a university student.
We're all volunteers. We're all volunteers. We're all university, college, school students. Some are even work. They're businessmen, business people. Sometimes we actually work from 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning, non-stop. Depends on the kind of work. Because in this country, there's nothing better you can do. I mean, I surely don't want to fight, so where else would I go? I'd go to do such things, nothing else. I mean, it gives you so much satisfaction sometimes. Like you're really doing something, you really count for something in this country. I feel what we're doing is the only hope. That's all I can say. I mean, I don't know what's happening. I know that what I'm doing is good, and that's all that counts.
هلا تسطح نزلي راسك شيلي.
This woman is yet another victim of the war. Barely patched up, she's left to the care of the only institution that can help her now, the family. A man who's worked all his life for the victims of war is Tima's great-uncle, Dr. Sadallah Khalil. At 73, he still takes a daily dip in the sea, whatever the weather. For 40 years, Sadallah's been a war surgeon, performing 30,000 operations. Today, he's at work on yet another victim of the sniper's gun.
She was at home, and a stray bullet had penetrated into her hip, which caused a fracture of the hip, and that needed an operation of a nailing of the hip.
Sadullah qualified as a surgeon in Edinburgh in the 1940s, then trained as a specialist in America, hoping to become a university professor.
And after I came back in 1948, I found there's a war between the Palestinians and the Jews in Palestine, and many wounded used to come to South Lebanon, where there were no hospitals, no surgeons, nobody to take care of any of this type of injuries, war injuries. So I was obliged to go and open a field hospital. I thought that I might do it for a couple of months, helping. I put a field hospital in tents, and later it extended and extended and extended. And I found myself that I was doing it all the rest of my career.
What do you think of all this carnage, this killing and slaughter, as a surgeon and a professional healer?
Well, as a surgeon, you know, we spend most of our time caring for the people who are ill, to get them better, and we look and find out that people are being killed for no purpose at all. And at a time we think that why are we going all through this trouble of spending time and years in treating wounded people while they are being killed just like that, with no any consideration of anything, no human life, nor any respect to anything.
And the war and the killing go on. In February, Israel withdrew from a slice of South Lebanon. After 2.5 years of enemy occupation, the people of the city of Sidon rejoiced. Sidon hailed the Lebanese army like liberators. But Shia Muslim resistance fighters claimed they, not the army, had forced the Israelis out through guerrilla warfare and suicide bombings. The ecstasy lasted only a few days. Soon the cycle of sectarian killings would begin again. But further south, Israel still occupies a large part of Lebanon where the Saidi family lived for centuries. Crossing Israeli lines, Shawi Saidi took us to his home village, Jwaya. There, the villagers live under constant Israeli surveillance. The villagers of Jwaya regard Shawi as a man of influence to whom they turn for help. Shawi himself is anxious for news of life under Israeli occupation.
People try to keep to themselves, to their homes, and as little as possible mix with others, because there are too many informers around and too many stories going on. So everybody avoids being in the limelight. If he comes now in his car and he sees me in there, he wouldn't leave his car on the road and go in because he's afraid it will be blown up by the ISIS. Any car they see on the road, they suspect it and they just blow it away before they arrive to it. يا الشيخ علي كيفك يا شيخ علي؟ اهلا 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 بالشيخ علي. اهلا فيك. اهلين اهلين اهلين. اهلا بكم. شو اخبارك؟ الحمد لله. كيف البلد؟ منيح. He is the hero of Jwaya. He is the outspoken person. He really speaks up.
From the village elders, Shawi learned of increased local resistance to Israel and of Israel's policy of iron fist reprisals. Together they prayed for the village at the grave of Shawi's father.
There is a significant change in the attitude of the people of this village since I was here last year ago. Several boys from this village are detained in Ansar concentration camp, and naturally they think we can help them. They would seek any kind of help they can get if they can. Naturally, they come thinking that I might be instrumental in helping them. I told them plainly, there's no one that can help them. It is an honor for anyone to be detained by the enemy.
Across the valley is Marrakeh, the village of Shawi's mother, Hani. The Israelis have often raided Marrakeh, taking many of its young men off to prison camps, for this is one of the centers of Lebanese resistance. The years of occupation have turned all the villagers of this quiet farming community into militant revolutionaries. Many have suffered.
She attacked the soldiers trying to pull her son away from them. One of the soldiers hit her on her arm, broke her arm, hit her on her head and on her shoulder with a stick, a heavy stick that they are carrying apparently when they come into the village. I would live under the occupation of any state rather than Israel. I am 75 years old and I have never seen criminal actions similar to the Israelis. I have seen the French, I have seen the British, I have seen the wars, I've seen many different armies walk through here, but never like this one.
Israeli reprisals fuel the villagers' hate. Many of their homes have been blown up.
The woman says the Israelis attacked her village. They got drunk in her house. They've beaten the women. They've beaten the young girls. They've beaten everybody. They killed her son. حركة أمل مظبوط مش حركة أمل إيه إيه اللي بدنا إياه
Amal is the Lebanese resistance. As an Israeli helicopter flew over, we met a unit of Amal fighters on a hillside in occupied South Lebanon. The helicopter came right up to the rim of the valley, but it never came within range. Back in Marrakeh, Shawi talked to Khalil Jaradi, the village resistance leader, about the movement's aims.
بالتأكيد المقاومة الوطنية إخذ على عاتقها تحرير جميع الأراضي اللبنانية من براثن الغزو والاحتلال الصهيوني.
Definitely the Lebanese national resistance movement has undertaken to liberate every inch of Lebanese soil from the Israeli or the Zionist occupation.
مجموعة من أفراد المقاومة الوطنية. المقاومة الوطنية طبعاً ماخذة على عاتقها متابعة النضال والجهاد.
We shall continue our struggle and increase our operations.
الإخلاء والانسحاب من المنطقة اللي بعدها تحت سيطرته حتى ولو دعا الأمر أن يعني تقوم
provide martyrs and suicide squads on weekly basis until the last Israeli soldier leaves the Lebanese soil.
2 weeks later, in the very room we had met him, Jaradi himself became a martyr. The Israelis had stormed Marrakeh. Jaradi escaped capture, but after the Israelis left, he was blown up by a bomb planted in the Amal office. With him died another fighter and 13 more villagers trapped in the building below. The Israelis denied any part in the bombing, but the people of Marrakeh vowed swift vengeance. We took the news of what had happened in her family village back to Hani in Beirut.
You get very sad about this, don't you?
Of course.
Why? That is a bomb now.
I think so.
It's still going on. This fighting is still going on after 10 years.
Of course, and it's going to stay. And it's going to stay. I don't know how long, but my feeling that we are not finished.
to record in 30 seconds. Seconds. You okay, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think so.
10 seconds.
Welcome back. Our second film tonight is about a grubby, vicious little war conducted by the strong against the weak in the streets of London, by gangs who are white against individuals who are not. The figures are imprecise, but Home Office estimates show upwards of 7,000 racial attacks in Britain each year. There is evidence that many thousands more are not reported. There's fear, too, that the number of attacks is once again on the increase. We decided to find out how the victims of this brutish cruelty managed to survive. As you'll see in Insult to Injury, they not only live in fear, but also in the strong suspicion that the forces of law and order could do rather more to help them.
The Teviot Estate, Tower Hamlets, in London's East End. Today, a family are moving, but they're not moving by choice. The family are Bengali, and for them, life on this estate has become unbearable. Mr. Tawhid Ali, his wife and children have been subjected to persistent racial harassment, grounds now under council policy for rehousing. In effect, they're being evacuated. The Ali case is not an isolated one. On this estate over the last year, there's been a total of 46 attacks. Injuries and hospital treatment are set against a background of daily abuse, property damage, attempted arson. Originally, there were 6 Bengali families living in these blocks. Now, they've all gone. On this London estate, the racists are winning. Finding somewhere safe to live, if you're a Bengali in Tower Hamlets, is not easy. The first house Tawhid Ali was offered promised better times, but his optimism was short-lived. The racists had got there first. As well as the graffiti, pigs' trotters nailed to the door, a calculated religious insult for Muslims. The mark of the National Front. A council flat south of the Thames in the borough of Greenwich. Shirley Smith, not her real name, will also now have to move her young family. In her case, the attackers got inside.
The first thing that hit me was the graffiti on the wall. After that, there was all the things all over the floor, furniture wrecked. The whole flat is a mess. So, television smashed with a hammer. My clothing and everything is ruined. I've come home and found dogs messed through the letterbox. But nothing to this scale has ever happened before. So it's quite frightening to think that someone can come in and do this. You know, you sort of think, thank God I wasn't in there. The night it happened, we phoned the police and one was here. He was quite sympathetic that morning. And next day I had 2 come round and they didn't seem so bothered. You know, matter of fact, part of our job, we'll do it and get out attitude. And they sort of said, I probably wouldn't hear from them again. You know, that would be the last, unless I had something that I found in the house that didn't belong to me, that needed fingerprinting, you know. And I haven't heard nothing more from them either. You know, I expected a bit more involvement from them, I think, but I sort of don't want to report anything to them anymore because it's like they're not bothered.
For fear of further attacks, Shirley Smith wouldn't reveal her identity. Mr. Kashnood Hussain is prepared to be identified. He has nothing left to lose.
This is the first time they tried to burn the flat. They put petrol in through the letterbox and they set it light. This is the first time, and there's another time, so if you come in, I'll show you.
This is northeast London, the borough of Waltham Forest. Another family, another attack.
We went out shopping, and about 3:45, a lady from the 181 same flats, she came around and tell us your flat is on the fire. So when we came here, there was the police and fire brigade and everybody was here already. The fire was out, but this is what happened to it. They just took the sofa here and they set it light. There was a video, TV and everything, and took the video and smashed the TV. They don't like our people in these flats. It's 2-3 times my car was downstairs in the car park. They smashed the windows, and the same time it happened to about every color people around here. Obviously, I was shocked. When I came here, I couldn't believe it. For 10-15 minutes, this is my flat. I thought I was just dreaming.
2 doors down the corridor live Janet and Jimmy Williams. Last summer, their baby daughter Louisa was shot at.
We was on the main road. As we was coming along the curb to cross over the road, a car came around the curb and slowly, followed us behind us. And then we heard a crack and looked back, and by that time the car had had sped off and gone round the next corner. And when we heard the crack, Louisa cried out, and we looked down at her and we saw, she was covered in blood, and we saw it was from the side of her head. So we took her out of the buggy, and as soon as we was on the main road, we went to the first shop that was open that had a telephone. They called for the police and the ambulance, and then when they came, they took us to Newham General. But when we got there, they had realised that the bullet wasn't on the surface of her skin. It had penetrated a lot further. They took some brain scan pictures to see how far the pellet had penetrated, and then he told us it had pierced her skull.
The family was unhappy with the police response.
Well, their attitude was that it was not a racist attack. First of all, they didn't have no evidence about that, but they seemed to want to make that point clear from before they even knew what actually happened. All they was interested in was that it really for us not to make a big issue out of it.
They wasn't helpful to us, and they still aren't being helpful, because it's more or less that they opened and closed that case in the sense that they saw it as somebody had a personal grudge against us. So therefore, it's not really a police matter. It is a police matter because she got injured, but it's not something to pursue on the lines of a racist attack.
The unwillingness of the police to attribute racial motives to attacks on blacks and Asians was identified by the authors of a report by the Policy Studies Institute. Their report, commissioned by the Metropolitan Police, also found widespread racial prejudice within the force. Commander Malcolm Sullivan, one of the top policemen in London's East End.
Well, it's a subject which has been subject of scrutiny recently, as you well know, from the Policy Studies Institute report, where it made comment on this. And it's something I take very seriously indeed, that there is no place for this sort of behaviour or that sort of thing in the police service, and we don't want it to affect the way that our officers deal with these incidents on the street. There is loose talk possibly within the police station, which I don't condone at all, but when it's put into practice, it doesn't affect police officers' performance. And every newcomer to this district is seen by me, and I tell him personally what my policy is and what I expect of him. And it takes a concerted effort by all of us, starting from me, to put the thing in the forefront of their minds, to stress all the way through the importance that we all put on this particular problem, which is an insidious problem in our community. Numerically, not very strong, but of course, emotively, it is a very serious problem.
The problem is that however sincere Commander Ferguson, and I'm sure Commander Sullivan, his successor, might appear to be, it isn't them that comes down onto estate when a call for help goes out at, say, 8 o'clock at night. It's ordinary police officers who turn up, and in this borough, certainly, the practice or the behaviour of those officers is often very unsympathetic, very inappropriate and frankly racist. And it doesn't really matter, therefore, what the very senior officers say, particularly when talking to the media. What matters is how the officers behave when they're called out to an incident in the evening by a Bengali family and how they respond to that. And that hasn't improved at all.
Vicky Carter's views are based on 3 years' experience as a lawyer with the Community Alliance for Police Accountability. In particular, it advises Bengali families and monitors the police response to racial harassment.
Harassment isn't easy to police. I mean, I'm not pretending it's easy to police, but if you just think for a moment, you do not go home at night and live with the fear that your window's going to be put in that night, that there are going to be bangs on the door in the middle of the night, there's going to be nasty stuff shoved through your letterbox, that you're going to be abused, spat at and hit every time you, your wife, your children leave the front door. Now, that's what you're talking about with low-level harassment, and it isn't pleasant. And the fact that people are expected to live with that is appalling. Now, nobody should be expected to live with it, and it can be policed. If, for once, the police acknowledged it was taking place and made a determined effort to respond by turning up, by listening to what the victims were saying, by taking statements, by interviewing or arresting or cautioning the perpetrators, and by stamping down hard, then they could do something to prevent its continuation.
A winter's night on the Bethnal Green estate. Muhibar Rahman returns home from work under escort. He's unable to enjoy the basic British freedom to go to and from work in peace. He suffered harassment from an established gang that regularly blocked his path and intimidated him on his own estate. A very frightening experience.
Yeah, I really feel frightened. When I entered the main gate, every night I found 20, 15, sometimes 30, sometimes the 15 boys. They block the main gate and corridors, and I think they're waiting for me to, the attack.
Muhibar Rahman and his daily escort identified members of the gang.
Yeah, I told the police so many times. So many times policemen came into my house and I told them.
The intimidation inflicted on Mr. Rahman included one serious assault. In this case, the police successfully brought a prosecution for actual bodily harm. But the general level of intimidation is not considered worthy of prosecution if it falls into the category of common assault.
Well, at the moment, we don't prosecute cases of common assault, which are very minor incidents where no injury is caused. Of course, that might be a minor incident to us, but in the eyes of the victim, it might be a very serious matter, particularly if it happens more than once. And in the light of this, on a forced basis, we are reviewing our whole policy of common assault.
There are lots of offences that are committed all the time, and the police have a discretion whether or not to prosecute. Most of the offences, most of the charges brought against people, say, on picket lines or in demonstrations, would be equally suitable in that sort of situation. Threatening words and behaviour, abusive words and behaviour, insulting words and behaviour. The police use that charge all the time in pickets and demonstrations. There's no earthly reason why a similar sort of charge could not be brought against people congregating and threatening Bengali people on an estate.
On those estates, Bengali groups and local residents organise nightly patrols for themselves, paying calls on vulnerable families to reassure them, thus underlining the widely held view amongst Asians that they must defend themselves against the threat of racialist violence. Mukid Mia, a schoolboy from Stepney. One day last year, he left school to go to the chip shop.
As we were going through the churchyard, my mate noticed 13 or 14 youths standing near the church door. And at that time I didn't notice it, and then they started running towards us. Then my friend shouted my name, and then he ran one direction, I ran the other. I took about 2 steps, and they grabbed me, they pushed me over. I tried to get up again, they kicked me in the head, and then I Then I just passed out. I didn't know that I was cut at first. And then I started, just feeling the slight pain at the back from the cut. I didn't notice how badly it was cut or nothing.
The police had been alerted to the possibility of an attack by Mukid's headmaster. He'd warned the police that a gang of youths with a known history of violence to Asians was congregating outside the school gates. The police answered the call, deploying a district support unit. It stayed for a short time, then left. A police presence remained, but the attack occurred shortly afterwards, out of their sight, 200 yards from the school gates. Mukid is scarred for life, wounds that required 26 stitches in all. His mother, Sarah, is still affected by the attack.
And when I went to see him in hospital, then I find out how bad he had injury. And I felt shocked and horrified, Mukid. And still I feel I can't find myself his peace. Even if now I talk it, I can't talk about him.
Mommy bring. Who gave it to Mommy? Who gave it to me?
Sarah works as a primary school assistant. She also knows what it's like to be physically attacked. It happened here 2 years ago. 2 youths accosted her on her way home. First they insulted her, taunted her, then one boy hit her with a piece of wood. The attack was reported to the police.
Police came to my house and he said he can't do anything. He said, this is not my job, I can't do anything for you.
The police refused to act. Sarah Bibi took out a private prosecution, no easy matter, and successfully got a conviction against a white youth for actual bodily harm.
But beyond all that becomes the attitude of the policemen as it turned out, to Mrs. Bibi when she called them for help, when she came up with her injuries, when she told what had happened, said that there were witnesses. None of those witnesses were interviewed by the police. None of the witnesses had statements taken. They were in no position to judge whether there was a case that was winnable in the court or not. They simply made a decision not to take it to court. They didn't, and she did, and she won. But it's just indicative of the way the police behave. They will belittle offences against the black people in this community.
The finding was from the investigation that there was an error of judgment by the officers concerned, that they acted unprofessionally and the supervision wasn't all that it should have been. And as far as I'm concerned, that was a very serious matter indeed, and I don't think that we performed then as we should do and as I would expect my officers to perform. And certainly at the end of the day, Mrs. Bibi received a letter of apology from the Deputy Commissioner, stressing how we felt about the matter.
Mrs. Bibi's complaint has been upheld by the Police Complaints Board. The police stress the case is something that happened in the past. They emphasise that racial attacks have recently been placed amongst the Met's top priorities for 1985.
Very recently, the last few weeks, a restructuring of the force was announced by the Commissioner, and one of the purposes of this restructuring is to bring the police closer to the community, and that will now be planned and will take place over the next 18 months or 2 years. And at the end of the day, the Commissioner is very hopeful that in fact it will bring us even closer to the community and make us even more effective.
Overall responsibility for policing racial attacks rests with A7 branch at Scotland Yard. Their last strategy encouraged better record-keeping of racial incidents and better investigation and follow-up of individual cases. We obtained the official police records for racial attacks for one London district. They reveal the size of the problem. This column shows whether or not there was an arrest. The answer in each case, no. For this area, last year, 84 recorded incidents, just 6 arrests. Take just one entry, the 7th of October. These are the people behind the statistics. Mrs. Chanan Devi, she and her daughter exiled from their own home after repeated attacks. But she returned to her flat with us to describe what's been happening.
What can we do? Where can we go? If we stay at my daughter's house, it is too small. They have a family too, and there's not enough room for us all to sleep there. It's very difficult. The youths threw fireworks and burnt our curtains. They annoy us all the time. Ever since we arrived, we have been having this trouble. If they break a window today and we repair it, they smash it again the next week. We have a lot of trouble. There is a group of lads who hang around and shout insults at us. One night we were sitting here. Outside there was a great deal of noise and we didn't know what was going on. Suddenly our window smashed and this pipe came flying through. Like this. We narrowly escaped injury.
In all, the police recorded 6 occasions when the home was attacked. The police say they've put the house under surveillance and interviewed parents of some of the children on the estate. They've made no arrests, and they say only one incident was definitely racial, because only once were the words "Paki Paki" heard prior to an attack, and Mrs. Devi remains unconvinced by some of the policemen who've called.
They come and ask us questions, but our troubles don't go away. What can we do? We tell the police say, you catch them and then phone us. But how can we catch them?
The urgency in that question was real enough. Since she spoke those words, that woman's been attacked again, and 6 more of her windows have been smashed. Meanwhile, today, the Metropolitan Police published new guidelines acknowledging that there are officers who are only too ready, as they put it, to think poorly of the black community. The guidelines also urged the police as a whole to increase their understanding of minority ethnic groups. Of course, as they're in the front line, the police are bound to get much of the blame, although whether these attacks can be stamped out without a fundamental assault on racism generally is not at all clear. Anyway, that's all for this month. I'll be back with the next First Tuesday on the first Tuesday in May. Until then, good night.